You have chosen the best method. Now what? It is time to select your profit level indicator, commonly abbreviated as PLI. Profit level indicators can be divided into two macro categories: rate of return measures and margin-based PLIs. In the first category, we have the return on assets, the return on capital employed, and the adjusted return on assets. In the second category, we have the operating margin, the net cost plus markup, or return on total costs, and the Berry ratio. Return on assets and return on capital employed are both derived by dividing a flow of profits by a stock of capital. In both cases, the numerator is operating profits. In the case of return on assets, the denominator is operating assets. In the case of return on capital employed, the denominator is operating assets less non-interest-bearing liabilities, generally accounts payable. The adjusted return on assets takes into account the impact of access to interest-free financing through accounts payable. A key assumption of all these is that assets are accurately reported. Various considerations guide the choice of one return PLI versus another. For example, the main assumption of selecting a return on assets is that the ratio of accounts payable to operating assets is about the same. For the return on capital employed, the assumption is that all of the risks and responsibilities of the operating assets financed by account payable are borne by the entity that is providing the accounts payable, and that the other entity is more insulated from these risks. A second question is whether return on assets or adjusted return on assets provides the most appropriate measure of profitability. The adjusted return on assets captures the benefits of the free financing, but not the economic costs associated with the increased risks. For example, when a supplier encourages a buyer to carry a higher level of inventory or offer better terms to its customers by offering a greater number of free days of accounts payables, that carries a cost in the form of higher risks, as well as benefits from lower financing costs. The adjusted return on assets may therefore be better or worse measure than the unadjusted return on assets, depending upon the relative magnitudes of the benefit of the free financing versus the economic costs associated with increased risks. Among the margin-based PLIs, operating margin, defined as operating profits over sales, is commonly used for distributors, since the cost of goods sold is the transfer price. In order to improve comparability, it can be adjusted for accounts payable, accounts receivable, and inventory. The net cost plus markup is commonly used for service providers, since revenues are the transfer price and can also be adjusted. The Berry ratio, defined as gross profit divided by operating expenses, can be used in situations where there is variability between the operating expenses to sales ratios, such as in the case of sales agents, procurement companies, and similar.